My first guest is Congresswoman Renee Ellmers. I am also going to bring on, because I've had him on historically, and I think his points are very important for today. His name's Sergio De La Mora. We're going to coordinate both, hopefully, if I can work these phones right. I'm not very good technologically, but Congresswoman, are you on with us?
I am. Good to be with you again, Kyle.
I am so happy that you have been able to make the time to come back on our show, because the last show, I can't tell you how impactful you were and how you've influenced our guests and our listeners so much. So thank you very much for taking the time today on Saturday.
Oh, happy to be with you.
I also, Sergio, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Kyle.
Okay, Congresswoman, I have actually my pastor on the line, Sergio De La Mora, who is in San Diego, and he has a book out that's called The Heart Revolution, and I think it really ties into, what I want to talk about with you today, that we really need to change the sentiment of people's moral fiber, their heart, in order to direct them in a way that they can make better decisions both in the political arena as well as in their financial arena, because the events that are taking place right now in the Middle East, in Africa, I want you to shed some light on, because I find it to be these are very difficult times. And we need to be precise. We need to be courageous. We need to have an administration that will lead us in the right way in an effort to make the right decision. So before we start, Congresswoman, I was wondering if you could shed some light on your thoughts about the current situation in the Middle East.
Well, as we know what has taken place, and we know that it hasn't ended. We know that there's still going to be more unrest. And, for us as Americans, this is going to continue until we in America are able to stand strong and powerful again. And you hit the nail on the head as far as we're moving forward. How do we fix this problem? Well, it starts with strong leadership from our administration, from the President of the United States. And unfortunately, I think one of the things that we've seen, and certainly those around the world, those who do not like us and will not ever like us, continue to see this lack of strength, and that leaves us vulnerable. And so for us to be open to attacks like this, I just feel for the families of the victims, the ambassador, and anyone who was associated, who was so, brutally attacked. And, they're over there doing these things for us as Americans and helping to bridge our connections to the world, and then for them to be so violently attacked. There again, we do have to restore those things. We have to come together as Americans and decide, we just can't stand for this anymore, and a good start will be November 6th.
Okay. Sergio, shed some light on how you, from your perspective with the Heart Revolution, how you think that we can turn our hearts to be more of a, you say, be the head, not the tail. Talk to me about that.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Congressman Renee Ellmers for being with us. It really is important to hear your voice, because America needs to know how its leaders feel right now about America, Kyle. See, the big question in the middle class in America is, why don't the leaders of America boldly say to the world, you're wrong about us, and America will stand against you as we stand for its people? So many times, Kyle, people want to do right, but if the courage doesn't come from the inside, it'll never be expressed. Right now, there is a lack of conviction in America. We've allowed ourselves to say we want to be the friends of all so that we don't create more enemies. But there comes a time in every person's life, like a father or a mother who will watch their children get bullied by someone at school. It's one thing to see your son and daughter get into a little argument with someone at school and not step in, but it's another thing when someone is bullying your kids, you realize, hold it, this crosses a line. And I think a line has been crossed in America, and we're waiting for the courageous hearts of our leaders to step up and rise up.
Congresswoman,
and it's needed now.
Congresswoman, would you agree with that sentiment?
Absolutely. You know, unfortunately, what we've seen over time are you know, we know what our enemies think of us. We know how they've been able to use even our own, you know, whether we're talking about the media, the political correctness that exists in this country, that feeling that, you know, if you are number one, if you're superior at what you do, and if you're successful, therefore you should be, you know, penalized somehow. Those are feelings that draw reaction. There's consequences to what we believe and what we're taught, and our children, you know, we don't tell our children to go out there and you know, play in their soccer game and just do as half as good as they should do. We go out there and tell them to win. That has been the sentiment in America for so long. It's what we were built on, and we have a president and administration that believes that we should be less than that and that we should even ourselves out. Well, we can't, because we're Americans. It's what we've been built with. It's our strength. And as long as we can continue to pass on these very confusing messages, we're going to see it here, we're going to see it worldwide, and ultimately we've got to protect every American, no matter where they are. And I believe in peace through strength, and that is a very important sentiment that we have got to bring back again.
Congresswoman, you know, and Sergio, I listen. I'm trying to be a better listener when both of these candidates speak, and I've watched Obama talk a bit over the last 3.5 years, and you know, I listen to the words, and these are words that I haven't heard before: shared prosperity, collectivism. You know, these words were not in the American vocabulary. It's almost like we need to learn our language again.
Well, Kyle, what I think what needs to happen is we need to get a president who has a conviction about America and who believes that America still is the guiding light. We're not perfect. We've been bruised, but we're not broken. And until we accept a position of leadership in the world and say to the rest of the world, this is what democracy looks like, this is what leadership sounds like. And until we do that, then what we do is we marginalize the position that God has given us in this generation. And everyone is waiting for the president to say, Libya, you're wrong, period.
Yeah. So, Congresswoman, what strategies would you put in place, or would you support right now today as we look into the eyes of the Middle East and in Africa and deploy our Marines? What?
Well, what I would, first and foremost, one way that I would start off is to open the door to a peaceful, meaningful dialogue that the president of our United States right now needs to sit down and have with Benjamin Netanyahu.
Okay.
You know, we have got to make sure that in the Middle East they understand that we are complete and total allies with Israel, and that is one area that our president has fallen down continuously. And we have got to make sure that that is crystal clear. Then we move on in other areas. We've got to send a strong message to Iran. We have got to send a strong message. You know, we don't know everything and all the inner dealings of what's happening there in the Middle East. You know, it started with the Arab Spring. It moves on. And now we see this unrest that has happened. And we can point the fingers at reasoning. I know the administration is there again, once again, not trying to take any kind of responsibility or feel that they need to interject because it's because of some innocuous video or movie. I understand where that comes from, but it's what has been built around it that has created the fact that this has happened. And we have got to be strong. We need a president who is strong. It starts at the top with the commander-in-chief, and then we can build a bridge from that point on.
Could you shed some light, Congresswoman, on, you know, because this would be very interesting for my listeners, because I continue to try and educate. With a situation like this, as you are Congresswoman of North Carolina, what do you do in a situation like this in order to support the overall government? I mean, are there things that you need to do from a North Carolina perspective to contribute to what's going on overall?
Well, basically, the biggest piece to that is making sure that I am up to date and educated on what is happening, and to the extent that I can be.
Okay.
There's much that we don't know, and there are pieces that we do, and we continuously every day try to put them together so that we understand the situation fully. And at this point, that is not the case. There are still many gray areas with a situation like this. But it is very important, one, that I am making sure that my constituents understand how important this is and how we need to, again, stand strong and be ready as a country and make sure that they know that we are doing everything we can to keep our military safe, any of our civilians around the world who are there who could be subject to this. There again, any of the embassies, any of the schools that have now been attacked, we have to make sure we're doing everything from that perspective. My job is to make sure that I understand the situation, and therefore I can stand to make good, correct decisions as we move forward.
Okay, so as you speak to your constituents, I try to speak to my listeners and bring more intelligent people like you and Sergio on to help me shed light on things. Sergio, do you communicate this effort through the church as well to make people understand what's taking place right now and how that may affect their lives?
Well, I think every person who has a captive audience has a responsibility to educate and empower the minds of Americans on how to respond to global issues locally. And one of the things that I believe it's important is that mothers and fathers have to engage their children and speak to them about this is how the rest of the world thinks. This is how we think. Because oftentimes the media, without us, admitting it and wanting to really make it an issue,
right,
tend to favor a perspective that isn't congruent or consistent with our American values. So parents, I want to empower you and encourage you. Sit down with your children and explain the American way of life so that if in between Nickelodeon or in between Disney or as they're changing channels, they hear something, they can say, well, hold it, I know what he says, but my parents say this. Because ultimately, the responsibility to educate and empower starts in the family, Kyle. When we start there, well, the ripple effect goes out.
We got to go to break. Congresswoman, I am so thankful for your time. If you don't mind, I would like to bring you back sooner rather than later so that you can continue to shed light on these issues.
Thank you so much, and again, a pleasure talking with you, especially at this so very vitally important time in our nation's history. This is it right here.
Have a wonderful weekend. This is Kyle Harrington. This is 1170 AM KCBQ. This is the Harrington Hour. I will be back with the Patrick Buchanan.